What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I want to talk about some key levels that are going to be tested right now, what's going on with the whole situation involving Israel and Iran, and what's going on with the economic calendar as we're seeing some new developments. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total, and deposit $5,000, and you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends very soon at the end of July, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with this market. So, as far as SPY is going, we have this resistance near the 604 area, which is where we like to get rejected, 604 to 606. But as we bounce near this 595 to about 592 zone, we like to see buyers defend right over there. As of right now, we're going back and forth, but notice that instead of SPY holding above 604 to 606 today to be bullish, we're starting to show signs of rejection again, which is going to be favoring this downside move to fill the gap near 597 by tomorrow, if not all the way down to 595 within the next 2 days. So we're favoring downside if we do get a rejection here, if we can't hold above 604. So please keep that in mind. I first want to go over the news now and break down more details about these charts. First and foremost, as you guys know, the G7 summit is going on. We have many leaders around the world meeting up. We have President Trump, the Chancellor of Germany, and many other leaders from France and other countries who are meeting up in Canada right now. They're meeting up to be discussing foreign policy, trade deals, and what's going on with wars around the world. And they've been talking a lot about Israel and Iran. So I want to talk about that in just a second. So with Israel and Iran, it's very, very intense right now. At the time I'm recording this, I'm still seeing both sides attacking one another. The history of these countries goes back centuries, if not thousands of years, and it's very, very intense. This is going to be having a big effect on everyday people's lives. It's going to be affecting, innocent lives and crude prices and a bunch of things like that. But the question is, how sustainable would that move be? Are we going to see this war last many months, or is it going to be ending very soon if we could see a deal between these countries? President Trump had a lot to say about this, and I do believe his words are very important for the markets, which is why I want to make this very quick and break down what he said. So, what did President Trump just say? First and foremost, President Trump mentioned that Iran is not winning this war. They should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late. He is saying that he wants to see a deal between Iran and Israel. As soon as possible, he wants to see negotiations continue. He also mentioned that at the G7 summits, the relationship with the UK is fantastic between the US and UK. They've signed a tariff agreement, and they've signed some very important documents. He's saying things are looking very good with another trade deal. He's very excited about this, so we'll see what this leads to. He also said there's going to be a fair deal with the US to help bring more jobs and income. That's what President Trump said. Then he said that Iran would be foolish to not sign a deal with Israel. He wants to see a trade deal, not a trade deal, sorry, a peace deal as soon as possible. That's what he's been saying. Then President Trump mentioned that when it comes to the U.S.'s involvement, um, he said that the U.S. Could get involved if Iran ends up attacking Americans. If Americans get attacked, yes, the U.S. could get involved. So he did make that very, very clear. So that's a very, very important statement, because this is going to tell us that, look, this war could be short term if we get some kind of deal. If we get a deal between Israel and Iran, that could lead to a peace agreement. We could see the war end soon. But if the US gets involved, this could be longer term, and it's going to have a bigger effect on with what's going on with crude prices. So that's very, very important to consider. When it comes to the market historically, 1 month and 3 months out, there have been many situations where the market saw some downside after we see the US entering wars, after there are some geopolitical situations. Yes, sometimes there is some downside 1 month or 3 months later, but typically 6 months and 12 months later, the market remains bullish. Now, war itself does not just solely depend on these things. It doesn't just solely affect the stock market. There's other factors, such as, was the US in a recession? What's going to happen with inflation? All those other things also affect us. That's why the longevity of this war affects crude prices. If this is a short-term war, Israel and Iran are attacking one another, but then the war ends early, this could have a very small effect on crude. It may not last that long. But if we end up seeing a longer term war where the US gets involved, right, if this lasts many months and crude starts to climb like crazy, that could contribute to higher inflation. That could be another big factor affecting supply chains, affecting wholesale prices, affecting transportation, and the factors that make prices go up. So if that ends up being the case, that could be a little bit worse for inflationary data, and it could be affecting the markets. Keep in mind that we have a couple of important dates coming up. We have export and import prices at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow being Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. Then we have at 9:15 a.m. industrial and manufacturing production numbers that could cause some volatility. So keep all of that in mind. And then on Wednesday is when we're going to be looking for FOMC, since we have Jerome Powell giving a speech and the FOMC economic projections reports. So keep all of that in mind. So FOMC is going to be very important. I do think the Fed is going to keep rates the same. But as time goes on, even if the Fed keeps rates the same, we're going to have to see what happens with Jerome Powell. What's he going to say about the war? Is he going to be talking about the risk of higher inflation? We're going to see how this affects the Fed's interest rate projections. It's going to be very important. We'll see how that ends up affecting the markets. Finally, we just have this for earnings, nothing too serious. I want to just make that very, very quick. And last but not least, we have our fear and greed index currently at greed. That is what's making up the majority of sentiment right now. Right now, momentum's at fear. We're going to see if this continues to hold up here or not. The put to call option ratio is right here at greed, which shows that there's actually a lot higher of a percentage of calls over puts. So there's a lot of greed in this market, lots of call buying, especially today. Could this lead to the market to go higher, or is the market about to get a rug pull? We'll have to see about that. And the VIX is at neutral. We're going to see if this breaks or not. So with that being said, what's happening so far? Like I said before, between 604 and 606, SPY likes to reject, reject, and reject. But near 595, we like to see SPY bounce. It tends to bounce off those levels. We have this gap down here to fill, so there's going to be a good chance of us potentially dipping back down to fill that gap near 597 to 595. And we're just going to have to see what happens at least from this point on. So keep all of that in mind. That's going to be very, very key, at least for the time being. So watch all these levels just to be safe. Now, when you zoom out of SPY, what you'll see is that we need to break 606 for us to have hope for this all-time high. We need some really good piece of news to come out. Something needs to help us. If we can't get that, we have this double bearish divergence. And so far, SPY is showing signs that it could be forming a lower high compared to before, because now we're making a lower high compared to this high, which is not the best of signs. So here's what's going to likely happen, in my opinion. And let me just clarify this one more time. If you're a big bear, you need to see SPY not only fail here, but lose 595 if that fails. So I'm looking for 590 or below. If you're a bull, you need to see SPY hold above 602 to 604 if that breaks. Sorry, not 602 to 604, 604 to 606. Break 604 to 606, this range right here of resistance. There's going to be some hope for bulls to try to push us back up to all-time highs. My prediction is that SPY is going to see this trend continue. We like to reject here, bounce, reject, bounce between 595 and basically 604. And there's going to be a risk of us coming down to fill this gap. So I do think that we're going to see some downside. Of course, it depends on the levels, but I do think the odds favor SPY coming down to fill this gap to 597 and maybe a retest of 595. We'll see if we bounce off this or not, but if we don't, there's going to be a risk of us continuing to fall back down. So please keep that in mind. So what's my prediction? I do anticipate some downside to fill this gap to 597. We might consolidate up here, but then there's going to be a risk of us dipping to at least 597 to 595, either tomorrow, if not FOMC day on a Wednesday. On the QQQ, it's the same setup, but actually we have another bearish confluence that's developing. So the first thing is that the QQQ likes to reject right here, right? Near 535 to 537. We got 1, 2, 3 rejections so far, but we need a follow-through move for confirmation. Secondly, we do like to bounce near 524. So we're going to see if support holds there. But the first thing is that there's a high at 537. We came down, made a lower high, so that could be a sign we're about to dump. The second sign is that this may be resembling a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If we get a follow-through move down, we're going to be looking for this head and shoulders, which could cause us to dump all the way down to not only these lows, but basically new lows. So you want to be very, very careful. So just to be clear, if we could break 537, we're looking for 540. And if we lose these lows at 525, we're looking for a dump back down. My gut tells me that this is resistance, so we're going to be dipping back down all the way down to like 530. If it doesn't hold, we're looking for a dump back down to 525, so keep that in mind. On the IWM Russell 2000, there's some weakness right over here as we're making lower highs. We need to break and hold above 212 to be bullish. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt to push towards these highs. If we're bearish, we're looking for a move back down towards 208. If that fills us, we're going to be dumping to 205. So my concern about the IWM is that this is kind of like a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If this dumps, we're going to be looking for a move back down. This could be turning back down all the way down towards this 205 area, so keep that in mind. On ES, just to kind of clarify this, ES is showing some weakness right here. We like to reject near 6,100 and we like to get bought back up around 6,000. So as of right now, we're showing some weakness. We have to see if 6,100 holds. If not, we could be dumping to 6,150 or below back down towards these lows. So we're still favoring downside right here. So keep that in mind. There's weakness on ES. Unless we get back above like 6,120, we're going to be favoring a move back down to at least 60.50 or below. On NQ, just like, okay, the QQQ, we have a potential left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. And that could be leading to a big dump like here if we truly get a rejection. Now, there's a high here. We came down at a lower high, but we need a follow-through move for confirmation. 22,200. Notice we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rejections. Not a good sign. To be bullish, you need to break 22,200 and close above that or hold above that at least for futures. Let me just clarify that. If you're bearish, you want to see us lose 22,000. If that fails us, I do expect us to dump back down towards these lows. I am anticipating that we're going to be consolidating around 22,200. Then we could be dumping all the way back down towards these lows around 21,800 or so. For Bitcoin, we're forming a cup here, so it's showing some signs of weakness. We have 110,000 as our resistance, and we have the support down here around 105,000. As of right now, as you could tell, there's a good chance we try to push for 110,000. Then we could be looking for a big rejection. So there's a good chance we turn back down as time goes on. On Tesla, the same thing is going on. Basically, when you look at the chart, we're rejecting a lot right here. We had a high here. We came down, made a lower high. Now, if we break this resistance around this 337 area, we're going to be looking for an attempt for 340. If we fail right here around this 320 area, we're looking for a dump back down towards 312. So we had a high here. We came down, made a lower high, and this could be dumping back down. So please keep that in mind. I think the odds are favoring the downside direction unless Tesla gets back above 337 to be bullish. This might be looking for a small dip back down to 320 or so. I'm seeing a little bit of weakness for now. Of course, after we get that news about the whole robotaxi, that could actually make things a little bit better for us once we get close to it. But for now, there may be a temporary downside move on Tesla. For Nvda showing some signs of weakness. We have this bearish divergence right here. I want to see Nvidia try to break and hold above 145 to continue to push. If we fail off this bearish divergence, there's still going to be a risk of us returning back down to 140. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping more. So you want to keep that in mind as time goes on. That's what we're seeing at least thus far. For others out there, we have Aapl. Aapl is showing a little bit of strength. There might be a temporary move up towards this 199 to 200 area. We have to break 200.5 to break higher. If not, we could be rejecting again to make a lower high. So please keep that in mind as time goes on. Netflix also has this head and shoulders. So it's not looking that great. I am seeing signs it's making a lower high here. We're going to see if this head and shoulders pans out. I do think we might temporarily go up towards 1,240 or so. And then we're going to see if we turn back down off this head and shoulders. So keep that in mind. MSTR is also kind of range bound right here. If we break 390, we're bullish. If we lose 367, we're bearish. As of right now, because of this range, we're looking weak. So we're favoring kind of like a head and shoulders rejection back down to about 365. For Celsius, there's a slight bearish divergence. Now, it depends. If we could hold above 44.5, we're bullish. We could still push higher. If we can't hold above 44.5, there's going to be a risk of us returning to at least 42 to 40. Keep that in mind for Celsius. For Supermicro, it's also range bound. We love to reject near 44 and get bought back up around 40. We're going to see if 44 holds. If not, we could be dipping back down to 42. So keep that in mind. For Palantir, I'm seeing some weakness. Now, we did push very nicely. Obviously, the war news has been helping it, but there's a gap down here. It might be coming down to fill the gap. Maybe it follows the market to some extent. And we're going to see if it could bounce off 36 or not, 136 or not. Might be dipping to 136, so keep that in mind. Rivian is looking a little bit weaker. Needs to hold above 14.2. If not, we could be dipping back down to the lower 13s, so please keep that in mind as time goes on. For SoFi, we're range bound right here. We want to see if this could break 15. If not, we could be dipping back down towards 14.5 to 14.15 to fill that gap if we're making a lower high. So I do see a risk of the low 14s. For AMD, I want to see if this can try to break above 128 to be bullish. If it can't, there's going to be a risk of us dipping towards 123 to see if that holds or not. So keep that in mind. ARM has tough resistance right here around 141. If that fails us, we're going to be coming back down to 137 to 135. For PayPal, If we break 73, we're looking bullish. And if we end up losing 70, returning back down, we're going to see if we make a lower high here to turn back down to 70. So I do see a risk of some downside. Please keep that in mind as we're seeing time progress. On Coinbase, we're range bound here. So Coinbase looks decent right now. It's trying to hold up, but keep in mind, it loves to reject near 270 and also sometimes around 265. So we came to 262. It could go a little higher, but if we reject, I do think we're going to return to fill that gap around 242. Maybe it depends on the news tomorrow and also what Jerome Powell says. So keep that in mind. On Amazon, we're going to see about this. If Amazon can break 220, we're going to be more bullish. If we can't get back above 220, there's going to be a risk of us turning back down towards 211. So please keep that in mind. Um, on Meta, if Meta ends up breaking 700, we're going to be a lot more bullish. If we can't break that, we're going to be at risk of dipping to like 692, if not to this gap fill at 682. I think that we are kind of range bound here, so it might consolidate before it starts dipping to 692. So you want to be very careful. On Google, we have a high here. We came down. We're kind of making like lower highs. We need to take out 180 to be bullish. If we come short of that, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 174. For Microsoft, we're kind of range bound right here. If we end up failing at 474, we're looking for a dump back down to 468. I'm favoring this downside move to 47 to 468 for now. For the VIX, there's a gap down here. So the thing about the VIX is even if it does dip a little bit, maybe the market does try to go a little higher temporarily. This could just be the sign of a breakout because we are starting to break out of this wedge right here, right? This is like a falling wedge breakout. And then this could be another falling wedge. It's also possible that this is a double falling wedge. We broke out, it's forming another falling wedge. Maybe we dip a little bit more. And then this other wedge leads to another breakout. So it's possible maybe as we approach FOMC, the market consolidates. Maybe this dips a little bit and then starts to break out like this for another downside move. I also want to add that there are still gaps to fill on the VIX. So that could also be another confluence. So there is a risk of the VIX dipping just a tiny bit before it starts to break out again. That could be not the best of signs for markets. The 10 years flat is going to be reacting to FOMC, and the dollar is also kind of flat right here. We're going to see if the dollar can get a break. It's flat here, but there's a slight bullish divergence forming, which could be forming a push for a 99 again. That's another confluence that's not the best for the markets. So am I a bull? Am I a bear? I'm going to be reacting to the price action, but I just want to say based off what I'm seeing right here, we're favoring a rejection move and a move back down to fill this gap towards the 597 area on SPY, if not 595, just based off technicals of what I'm seeing on the charts so far and also based off other factors. So please keep all of that in mind. Anyways, I wish you all the best. I thank you all so much for listening, and I hope that there's going to be peace or more peace in our world. I hope that the wars end early, guys, and that's what we are all hoping for. We'll see if the US gets involved. There is a possibility of that happening looking at these factors. And I just want to say that, we have to just try to be unbiased as time goes on and just keep our heads held up high, no matter what, right? There are going to be hardships that come, but keep your guys' heads together. And if you stay true to yourselves and work hard, your best days are still yet to come. Believe, guys, work smarter, work harder, and never ever give up. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your guys' days, and I'll be back very soon tomorrow before market open for another update. I am favoring downside a bit more for the markets looking at the setups, but we'll see just to be safe looking at the levels. All right. Thank you for listening, and peace out.